What is going on, guys? Paul Ryan back at it again. I hope everybody's having a good Saturday. We know the Cowboys aren't, right? We talked about the injuries to Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. It was reported by Michael Gelkin that the Cowboys are looking for outside help at defensive end. And while you like the thought, when you really look at the situation, there's not really a lot of defensive ends, at least viable defensive ends that are available on the market. He also reported that because of the cost to acquire and then to pay him, that Hassan Reddick of the New York Jets, who the New York Jets actually just recently acquired this offseason, who is currently holding out in hopes of getting a new contract, is not going to be an option for the Cowboys again because of the cost to acquire him via a trade, and then you have to pay him as well. So let's just put that thought to rest. I know that was a name that some people had brought up on X, aka Twitter. But you know how the Cowboys roll, man. They're not going to spend that kind of capital on a guy like that and then also pay him when they wouldn't do it in the offseason, which would have been a lot cheaper, right? But and we saw how they handle the contracts of CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott too. So just some food for thought on that. But yeah, Marshawn Nealon, he's going to get a lot of rub. Chauncey Golston, he's going to get a lot of rub. Carl Lawson, somebody who's going to get a lot of playing time as well. Like we talked about the other night, man, I don't really know what to make of this defensive line with the loss of our two best players. But hey, Marshawn Nealon, man, I know we're all excited about him. As far as him, being like a sack getter, that's to be determined. I think he got one Thursday night on Daniel Jones. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but I know he was more going to be utilized or better suited at stopping the run, at least for this season. There's potential for him to be a sack guy, but his main role was to help stop the run. So we'll see what happens there. Carl Lawson, I believe it was 2, maybe 3 years ago, he had 8 sacks. Maybe as a designated pass rusher, he could I don't know, give you something. I mean, it's nice to have the veteran there. And then Chauncey Golston, somebody who's been around the team for a while now. I don't know what to expect from him, but hopefully he can show us something. It's a big year for him. I know earlier in the offseason, he was kind of a sneaky guy who I thought would, in a bigger role, maybe show us something, maybe potentially be a Dorrance Armstrong-esque replacement for Dorrance Armstrong. So you never know, man. It's kind of interesting because you think about in the Mike McCarthy era, the injuries that the Cowboys have suffered and how he's handled, and the next man up mentality has actually kind of worked for the Cowboys. Thinking back to 2020, right, his first year here, we lose Dak for the season in week 4 or 5, and while we didn't make the playoffs or anything, he had the team competitive with the worst defense in the NFL, I believe in NFL history, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. With Andy Dalton at quarterback, I mean that quarterback carousel, he's somehow, some way, albeit in a really, really bad division, the Cowboys were right there in the playoff hunt all the way until week 17. So, and then in 2022, we lose Dak Prescott just for a game, but Cooper Rush wins a big game on the road in Minnesota. And I believe we had another significant injury that season. I just can't think of it. I don't know if it was Tyron Smith or not. Maybe it was. But then in 2022, Dak goes down week 1. We lose him for 5 weeks, and Cooper Rush goes on to be 3-2 with our defense really playing some dominant ball. Thankfully, that was an injury that happened early in the season. But the reason I bring these things up is because Mike McCarthy has found a way to deal with substantial injuries. And again, the next man up mentality has something that has worked in his favor during his time here in Dallas. So losing two guys like Micah and DeMarcus Lawrence, while we don't have really, man, I hate to say this, but viable replacements currently on the roster, I am interested to see how these younger guys step up and what they can do, especially, with Mike Zimmer, who has been known to scheme and, utilizes his players well. So I don't know, man. I want to ask a question, but I'm going to save it for the pod. It's about the Cowboys season and maybe how should we approach it with these injuries. But with Micah Parsons potentially missing either 2 to 4 weeks and Tank Lawrence missing at least 4 weeks, I do kind of wonder what the Cowboys' thought process is and what the. I know some of the fan base thinks that the season is over. That's something we'll talk about on the podcast on Monday night. But yeah, it'll be an interesting discussion. It'll be interesting to see what the Cowboys do if they attempt to make a trade, which I doubt they will, or if they try to see who's out there on the open market. Maybe they can poach somebody off the practice squad. But hey, I'm waiting just like you guys. It's kind of weird to not have a game tomorrow night, but we won. We won this week. That's all that matters. We get time to plan for Pittsburgh, and we take it 1 week at a time. But again, guys, I hope everybody's having a good weekend. I'm Paul Ryan. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.